Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Daily Newcastle podcast for this immediate reaction as Arsenal have beaten Newcastle United 3-2 in Singapore in what was a thoroughly entertaining game. For a friendly. If you're new to the channel, my name is Michael Grahamsall, and this episode will be going out on Sunday evening instead of your regularly scheduled Monday episode. And the reason for that is we are looking to try some new content out. So hopefully we'll be able to do more of these almost immediate reaction pieces. Let us know if you enjoy that, because then we can go and do it even more in the future. And, well, that's just because we know you like it. Simple as that. If the more you like, the more we do. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But going into the game, we saw Newcastle. We saw a very different side of Newcastle than what we saw against Celtic. We saw two different 11s and 45 to each team, which we knew would happen. That's similar to what we saw at Celtic, but Alex Murphy was at left back and Jamal Lascelles was in from the start as well. So that was a little bit of a surprise. It almost emphasised the need for new bodies in at Newcastle. But it does have to be said, neither player did themselves any harm, if that makes sense today, despite not having the best games. I'll start at the beginning. I thought for the opening 5 minutes of the game, before the goal, I thought we were a tad sluggish. Arsenal's press is fantastic, particularly when they've got Havertz up top. I think his work rate is so underrated, and what Gyökeres does when he comes in might make them, it might break them if he can match that work rate but still bring more goals. But we don't care about that. But I thought I mentioned that because I thought we matched their work ethic, but where we didn't match them was for quality. There was a lot of loose passes early on, but the moment where we actually managed to get through, Tonali gets on the ball, beats his man, delightful little turn, about 35 yards out, away from our goal. We immediately beat the press. There's a few little intricate passes in midfield. It ends up with Tonali on the wing, on the right wing. He cuts it back to Alanga, whose shot goes sort of down into the floor, hits off the post and goes in. I'll be honest, it's not the greatest finish. It's not the cleanest finish, but as long as they go in, who cares? You can score 10 of those a season and I'll be a very, very happy man. So it has to be said as well with the goal. Willie Mosula taking two of the Arsenal defenders towards the front post, leaving that gap, so to say, for Alanga in the centre. Very impressive. The youngster did well there. Unfortunately, didn't do too much more after that, but that was very good from Asula. And it does have to be said, with his work rate and mentality, it is really impressive. And if he can get his finishing and his ability to match, you'll have a manager's dream there. So then he could have a very good future with Newcastle, but for now, there's still work to be done. But following the goal, I thought we did okay. We struggled with the press. The work rate was fantastic at times. I think for the most part, I would actually say it was fantastic. A couple of moments by a couple of players that I wasn't particularly happy with, particularly with it being pre-season. You'd expect players to be, not busting a gut, but at least putting the effort out there to say, look, you want to pick me in the opening game of the Premier League season. And there was a couple of players I didn't see that from, but Eddie Howe will have seen it as well, and Eddie Howe's opinion means a lot more than mine. But yeah, I thought we were okay, but the player in particular who I was really impressed with his work ethic was Anthony Gordon. Less impressed with how he was on the ball, but he's not the greatest winger in the world. He's a very good winger, but sometimes against top defences, sometimes wingers have bad games. It happens. But he helped out Dan Burn and young Alex Murphy a lot during that first half. And it was one of the reasons why Bukayo Saka didn't have the best game, but still had a very solid game. We had a few efforts through Bruno, Tonali. Willock nearly gets on the end of the Tonali effort, which if he can get any contact on it whatsoever, well, he either stops the ball in its tracks or it likely goes in because Raya had already started moving towards the far post where Tonali's shot was going. But realistically, it didn't take too long for Arsenal to turn the game over. Started with a goal from Newcastle old boy, Mikel Merino. Great player. Was gutted when we lost him. Even more gutted when he went to Arsenal. A few years later, Willock loses the ball, recovers, and then tries to do a little 1-2 with Bruno. Unfortunately, neither of them control the ball particularly well. Arsenal, while Merino himself gets the ball back, it gets up to Kai Havertz, who controls it, I have to say, quite brilliantly. Back heels it into the path of Merino, who delicately places the ball in the bottom corner. And we'll probably have to get used to that type of quality because we are in the Champions League again this season. If we're in the Conference League or the Europa League, you're probably not going to come up against those kind of goals too often. But I'd probably expect to see a very similar goal against Champions League opposition next season. So hopefully we've learned from it in pre-season and we'll all be looking back and going, wow, thank God we had that game. But yeah, as we tend to sometimes, we do capitulate. A soft free kick, it does have to be said, on the right-hand side. Given to Arsenal, 3 players end up on the deck. 2 Arsenal, 1 Newcastle. Decision's obviously not given our way. Trippier's caught a little bit off guard, although it's harsh to single him out because every player did. The ball ends up crossed in towards the back post. It's a brilliant cross. Alex Murphy blasts it into the back of his own net. I do feel like from the position Murphy was in, an experienced head probably just knocks it away from goal. Just gentle tap. Unfortunately, he's got Bukayo Saka behind him. He's tried to blast it out of play, and he's ended up putting an absolute thunderbolt in the back of his own net. I'll give him credit. It's an excellent finish, and if he doesn't do anything, Bukayo Saka scores. So he was right to try and do something. I think the execution maybe just showed his inexperience a little bit. But he didn't have a bad game. The OG is obviously going to make it look worse than what it was. But yeah, that was pretty much it for the first half. Not a lot happened elsewhere. Second half, we make 9 changes. Yes, Nick Pope and Osula stayed on. That was it. And it was only actually about the 47th, 48th minute I realised how bad the pitch was. Because Barnes has a chance to break early, and the ball, you just see it just bobble, 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 bobble. And if you're on Spotify, that probably sounded horrendous. But it was up and down horrific amounts, and there's no doubt that impacted Arsenal as well. And I just didn't notice it earlier. But yeah, Barnes trying to break, and it was arguably the slowest break in the world because of the pitch. Arsenal have been training on it. I read after the game. They've been training on that pitch, so it wasn't exactly in pristine condition. But at the same time, we're going to come across pitches like that in the Champions League. We need to be able to adapt. And on the day, Arsenal seemed to do it a bit better than what we did. But yeah, it's unfortunate. At the end of that, some particular scenario, Barnes tried to cut it back. Osula moved forward. And yeah, they just weren't really on the same wavelength, which I have noticed a bit. It does tend to happen between those two more than anyone else. Barnes and Osula don't really seem to have, I hate to say chemistry because it just makes it sound like I'm talking FIFA. But yeah, they don't really seem to have that particular chemistry. But once they play with each other a lot more, if they get on the same wavelength, it could be very dangerous because I feel like there was a couple of times against Everton, we saw the same thing. But yeah, then perhaps the moment of the game which will have the most say on what happens next season, because Arsenal hold on to the ball for on a throw-in for a little too long. Let's be honest, we're Newcastle fans. We know quite a bit about Arsenal's time wasting, but less said about that better. But basically, Arsenal hold on to it for a bit too long, and the referee actually gives the turnover of possession, gives Newcastle the throw. If that's consistent in the Premier League next season, I'll like it. But I would have hated it 2 years ago when we were absolutely incredible with the dark arts. But yeah, less said about that now, the better. But if that's the same on the first day of the season and the last day of the season, well, and everywhere in between, I'll actually be pretty happy because I think that's a good change. Then Arsenal was it next? Yeah, Arsenal should have led 3-1 next. Because Pope, it's a bit of an odd pass to Joe Linton. We're trying to play it from the back. Joe Linton's not exactly the best player with the ball to feet, but it's not a great pass by Nick Pope either. Joe Linton loses the ball, but the ball goes out wide to the left. It's crossed in. I can't remember who crosses it in. It might have been Calafiore. And it's a great overhead kick by Saka. Very powerful. And Nick Pope saves very well. So he's forgiven for that particular moment. But yeah, bit of a dodgy pass again from Nick Pope. And then, well, we score almost immediately afterwards with Miley and Tino Livramento creating a bit of space on the right-hand side. And then the ball goes out to Jacob Murphy. He cuts inside, takes a couple of touches, and just buries it into the bottom corner from distance. It's a brilliant, low, powerful drive, and it's kind of what we've come to expect from Jacob Murphy. It was an absolutely excellent finish. But what I noticed most for that particular moment was when Jacob Murphy's celebrating, when the team are celebrating, Eddie Howe's having a go at someone. And he's saying, effing pass it forward. He seemed really, really annoyed with a certain player for just not passing the ball forward. I'm not sure who it was. The camera didn't pan to the player afterwards. Maybe someone noticed, but I didn't. If you did, let me know, because I haven't got a clue. I tried to find out after the game as well, but anyone I asked hadn't noticed it. But yeah, the moment that changes the game is the substitution to bring Arsenal's Max Doman on. Or Dauman. I'd heard a lot about him, particularly from the friendly against AC Milan, where Arsenal fans were saying he's the best thing since sliced bread, which is mental because Ethan Nanieri and Miles Lewis-Skelly were apparently that as well, and every other youngster they've ever had. But yeah, this one actually looks like he's been playing at the top level for years. I know he just had a cameo today. Yeah, he had two great runs, and the efforts were eventually saved by, I think it was Nick Pope for the first, and then I think it was John Ruddy for the second. And then obviously for the penalty, he had Matt Targett on toast. Just swift movement of the ball. It's very early to say, and I'm not saying he'll be as good as Lionel Messi in the future. He could be nowhere near, but just that quick burst of pace, that movement. I remember seeing that from Messi when I was growing up I was about 10 to 12 years old and thinking, wow, that's incredible. So it reminded me a bit of that. Obviously, he's brought down by Joe Linton for the penalty. He's made a meal of it, let's be honest. But I think every 15-year-old in world football will do that. They're trained to do that these days. So it's not great. And then the penalty is converted by Martin Odegaard, who actually probably had one of his best games against us after coming on. He looked pretty good today. And I think the only time I remember him having a good game against us was that 2-0 at St. James's Park a couple of years back. So, yeah, very good on the Arsenal side. On the Newcastle side, we had some decent chances. Matt Targett and Livramento put in some good crosses. Unfortunately, they found nobody. But if you had someone on the end of it, you got two great chances right there. Unfortunately, Osula did have his one big chance of the game. It's a brilliant cross from Jacob Murphy on the right-hand side. Just a long ball over the top. Perfect run from Murphy. Perfect run from Osula. The cross is really good as well. Osula's just really unlucky with a powerful header that just goes wide of the post. Although I think the keeper probably had it covered. And then, the last thing for Newcastle was Sven Botman. Went off with a tweak to the groin after about 25 minutes in the second half. He only played 25 minutes and the game came on at half time. And ultimately we lost the game 3-2. But it was a lot better than the game against Celtic. I mean, I think we all expected that. But with the news that, Alex Isak's apparently looking to leave, we got battered off Celtic. Sunderland getting battered off Hearts. If you haven't seen, that's brilliant. It's good that the weekend's starting to see, we're starting to see a few positives for Newcastle because it's been a tough week. But in the second part, I'm going to go to a little advert now. And then I'll go into player ratings for the first half and the second half. And then I'll let you know what's coming up next week. So for now, here's a little word from Bioniq.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Cracking stuff. And we really should get a video for that, because for those watching on YouTube, you do just look at me either having a drink and then sitting there awkwardly for 20 seconds. But thank you very much, Bioniq, for sponsoring the episode. And for player ratings, I'm going to start with the first half 11. Then I'll go into the second half 11, just because that seems to make the most sense. So we'll start at the back, which means we're starting with Nick Pope. I'm going to give him, and I do apologise if these don't make sense. I'm doing these literally off the top of my head. I wrote down a couple of notes, but I'm just, the number that comes is purely from the heart and the head. So Nick Pope, I'm going to give him a 6.5. I don't think he could do anything with either of the goals. He made 3 or 4 decent saves, and then a couple that were, pretty standard. But I can't give him anything more than that, really, because his passing was a large reason why I don't think we could get our game plan off the ground in that first half. I remember a couple of times where he tried to pass it out wide to Alex Murphy or Kieran Trippier, and they were just really poor passes, and they put us under pressure immediately. So yeah, Pope 6.5. Goalkeeping was good, but distribution, not quite. And, well, distribution's now a massive part of the game. Trippier, I think Kieran Trippier is probably a 7 for me. Said he was caught out slightly for the second goal. I think every player was by that quick free kick. But for the most part, in that first half, he kept Leandro Trossard really quiet, and there was a few moments where really good defensive work led to a couple of dangerous turnovers and counter-attacks for Newcastle. So, yeah, I think Trippier was probably one of the better players. Tempted to give him a 7.5, actually, saying that, but I'll stick with the 7. And then we've got Lascelles and Dan Burn, who were the 2 centre-backs. I think Lascelles had a better game than Dan Burn. But the reason why is because Burn was forced to be the outlet at the back. Every time we tried to pass forward, it was through Dan Burn in that first half, and that's not the kind of defender he is. He's not the outlet. He's the stopper. He's the giant in the middle who you can put 700 crosses in, and 699 he's just going to head away. So, yeah, I've given Burn a 6. Yeah, I'm going to give Dan Burn a 6 because of that. A lot of his passes, while finding the mark, I remember a couple with Tonali where he just found them really difficult to control and led to a few turnovers of the ball. And then Lascelles, I don't remember him on the ball too much, but he's really not the defender you want when you're playing out from the back. But it was good to see him back. He's a very solid centre half. I think, he's the Steve Bruce era of Dan Burn for us. It's good to have him back. Captain fantastic. I wouldn't be surprised to see him leave, but it's always good to see him put in another solid performance at the back. And then left back was obviously Alex Murphy. I've given him a 5 point. Do I give him a 5? Yeah, I'm going to give him a 5.5 because I'm going to hold him to the same standards I'm holding the rest of the team. It wasn't a great performance. I thought when he had the help from Burn and Gordon against Saka, he did okay. He did well. But at the same time, there was still quite a few times where Saka got the better of him, and then either Gordon or Burn had to help out. For a young lad in pre-season, it was a decent performance. But if I'm putting him against first-team players in that standard, it wasn't great. But against Bukayo Saka, pre-season, promising start for Alex Murphy. And I still don't think he's at the level we need him to be just yet. But I definitely think there's championship level defender in there right now. And that's, when we were in the Champions League the first time, it's pretty much what we had in backup the whole time. So he could have a decent season with us this year if he's not loaned out. The midfield three, so it was Joe Willock, Bruno Guimaraes, and Sandro Tonali. I'll start with the bottom for me. I'll give them a 6, a 6.5, and a 7. Willock is the 6. I thought he was largely anonymous. I also noticed he was visibly frustrated a lot of the time, just as passes weren't going the way he wanted to. There's a moment in my head which I was really annoyed at during the game, and it's annoying because it's stuck in my head. But there's a turnover, Arsenal get the ball beyond him, and then he literally just turns around and throws a little bit of a strop, and it's literally for a second, but it's just because that's stuck in my head. Really didn't like it. Few players probably did it as well, but just that one I remember seeing it stuck in my head with Arsenal, particularly in a dangerous attack at the time. So yeah, it's a shame because I really like Joe Willock, but just seems like it's not working out for him. Bruno is the 6.5. Passing was probably the best of a bad bunch, as you'd probably expect with him and Tonali being two of the best. He seems a little off the pace. Obviously, it's pre-season, so he obviously will be. But just in comparison to his usual self, you couldn't fault his work rate, but he'll be largely disappointed with that, I think. He'll know that he could have done a bit better. But still, I actually thought he had put in an okay performance. And then Sandro Tonali was the 7. I think without him, we really struggled to get out our own half in that first half. He was the best carrier of the ball by a country mile, and he played really quite well. Defensive work probably wasn't as good as usual, but that Arsenal team's full of attacking talent. You can't be expected to have a great game every time. Then our front three was obviously the two Anthonys and Willie Masula. So Anthony Gordon, I'm going to be a bit harsh, and I'm going to give him a 5.5. His work rate was excellent, which is a weird thing to say straight after giving someone a 5.5. He helped us out a lot defensively, but on the ball, he really lacked ideas, and maybe it was because he didn't have much support, but I felt like a lot of the time on that left-hand side, he was just giving the ball away and really struggling to impact the game offensively. And if I'm rating wingers based on their defensive contribution, I was probably giving Miggy Almiron 10 out of 10s most week back in the day. So offensively is the reason Gordon's a 5.5. If I was doing it just on his defensive contributions, yeah, he would have been a high number. But against Arsenal, we've seen Gordon do really well in the past, and that attacking outlet's what's won us games against Arsenal in the past. We just didn't see that today, but it's pre-season, so as long as he does it in the league, I couldn't care less. Then the other Anthony, Alanga, first start. And for me, I'm going to give him a 7. He did get the goal. It was, I want to say it's a well-taken goal. It's not, but it's a chance he has to finish, and we've seen plenty of players, Isak included, sky those kind of chances over the bar. So I'm saying that's with the idea that Alexander Isak's arguably the best finisher we've had at the club in years. So it's high regards. I'm not saying Isak's terrible now. I'm not going to be one of those fans that completely turns his head. But yeah, it was a tough chance for Alanga. He took it well. Fair play. He looks energetic. He was probably our main outlet in the first half. But on the ball, you can just tell when a player hasn't quite clicked yet with his teammates. There was a few passes that were just slightly overhit that maybe a Callum Hudson-Odoi or I'm trying to think, Morgan Gibbs-White as the number 10 would have typically got onto, but we're playing it to players who are just a little bit slower and they just didn't get there. Good early impressions though. I'm really excited to see what Anthony Elanga can do this season. And then Osula, he might be the next Shola. And I mean that as in he's going to be a cult hero that everyone likes, but he's just not going to be good enough. I've given him a 6. Maybe it's harsh. He's pressing and he's harrying was a great asset for us during the game. But when he gets the ball, I really don't see enough from him. It's a tough game to judge him on because Arsenal, he was against Saliba and Gabriel. But with Isak set to leave, we need players to step up. And that, to be honest, I probably would have given him a 6.5 if that header from the Murphy cross was just on target. But with it going wide, it was still an excellent header. But if it's on target, at least you're forcing something of the goalkeeper. Probably wouldn't have given him a 6.5 for it being straight at the keeper. But even anywhere towards the corners, he's sitting there and going, look, at least there's a chance of it going in. Goes wide, there's no chance of it going in at all. So we're second half 11. I'll start with Ruddy, even though he came on midway through the second half. I'll just give him a 6 because I don't think he was really on for long enough. He made a good save to deny Saka and Dalman, actually. Couldn't do anything about the penalty. But yeah, it's one of those. Wasn't really on for that long. Could have given him a 6.5 easily. Yeah, nice to see him in the Newcastle shirt. Tino, I've given a 6.5. I think, to be honest, I can't think of anything he really did wrong. I think he was solid, but potentially unremarkable. Had a good game. 6.5 summed up, really, there. Much better than average, but nothing really that special. Botman, I'm going to give a 6 again. He was only on the pitch for 25 minutes. Didn't really do all that much. Was relatively solid. I remember there was one moment where he can't get the ball out of his feet quick enough and it goes out for a corner. But yeah, hopefully his injury isn't too bad. And we'll see him, well, maybe not against the K-League 11, but in the games against Espanyol, etc. And then I guess I'll go to who came on for Sven Botman, which was Harrison Ashby, who I honestly never expected to see in a Newcastle shirt ever again. But I've actually given him a 7. I think he was really quite impressive. He came on. I genuinely don't remember him losing a duel. I think he helped carry the ball out excellently in that second half. He had a good chance at the end of the game as well. He really, if that went in, he probably would have been one man of the match for me. It's a shame it went straight at the goalkeeper, but defensively, I thought he was really good. And yeah, solid performance for Ashby, actually. I didn't have much hope for him at all at the start of pre-season. I expected him to go out on loan and then eventually leave on a free. He still could, but if you're a young player wanting to push through, it's the kind of performance you need to get more minutes. And then talking about the kind of performance you need, I'll go to the kind of performance you don't need. And that was Matt Targett. He was solid until Max Dowman came on. And Dowman had a great game against Targett. But if a 15-year-old has you on toast at every opportunity, I think the way Dowman takes him on for the penalty, he's probably going to have nightmares about that tonight. So yeah, I've got to give him I'm going to say a 5.5 because he was solid for a large part of the half. It was just when that young lad came on that he really struggled. So 5.5. And then Joey, Miley, yeah, were they the only two in midfield? I guess Sean Neve as well. When he replaced Osula. He's more of a striker, to be fair. But yeah, Joelinton and Miley, I'm going to give Joe Linton a 6. It was a really stupid penalty to give away. But he does stupid fouls every single game. We know what to expect it. There's a lot of times where it works quite well in breaking up the play. I do think when he brings the ball out, he is, quite good just with that power and pace. But yeah, it was a stupid penalty giveaway. A few stupid fouls. About 15 seconds after Dowman comes on, he leaves his hand out and catches him in the face. I'm aware of, you want to let him know you're there, but it was a struggle to watch him today. He wasn't at his best, Joe Linton, but we'll probably see him have, for every bad game he has a great game. So I look forward to seeing him dominate against the K-League 11. Miley was better. Miley was much better than Joe Linton for me today, which is insane because if you're as slow as Lewis Miley is, you need to be strong. But he's not necessarily strong in the tackle at all. And his duels he's not great in the duel. But on the ball, he is a very good talent. And I can see him having a really good future. I don't think he's as good as what everyone made him out to be straight at that first Champions League season. But there's definitely a good player there, and he's probably our brightest prospect. I'd actually say he's better than what Anderson was at this point. And obviously we sold Anderson for 35 million. So let's see how Miley goes. But yeah, I think he put in a good performance. He does have the quality to make the difference. And I think he played well and didn't he didn't do himself any harm today. And I think against a good Arsenal side, putting in a decent performance. It's a 6.5. For the two wingers that came on, I'm not going to go for Sean Neve because I don't think he was on for long enough. I might be wrong, and maybe it was above 20 minutes, but I don't remember him touching the ball that much, really. So for the two wingers to finish off, you can't really have two more contrasting performances, can you? Harvey Barnes came on and didn't really do anything. It was very similar to Gordon, of where his defensive work was decent, but it wasn't as good as Gordon's. And then offensively, I'd say he was slightly better than Gordon, but again, every time he got the ball, he did a nice little run, but it ended up pretty much going to no one, if I remember correctly, every single time. So I've got to say Harvey Barnes is I'm going to say 5.5, same as Gordon. I wanted to kind of go 5, just because there wasn't that defensive work to back it up. I generally think if Matt Targett was given the help that Alex Murphy was, then maybe Max Dowman wouldn't have had the field day that he had coming off the bench. But yeah, he didn't cause the Arsenal defence any trouble whatsoever, really, did Barnes. And then for Murphy, I'm probably going to give him a 7.5. His quality on the ball shone through, number of good crosses, and of course, he scored the goal, which is a brilliant finish. Alanga might be coming for Jacob Murphy's spot, but Murphy isn't going to let it go that easily. And I thought he had a really good game. Just a striker away, really, from two decent lineups. You want maybe replacements in there for Matt Targett, Ashby, Osula, Lascelles, and Lewis Hall would obviously play instead of Murphy. So, yeah, I think we're a few players away from having a really good squad for the Champions League. The young lads showed that, maybe in the environment they could do okay. I do think, obviously, it's going to be a big step up, Champions League. This is just a friendly in Singapore at the end of the day, but they did put the right attitude out there, and they've looked okay. Barnes has been a bit of a worry. Obviously, didn't look great against Celtic, and didn't look great today. I did say I thought he'd have a good pre-season. So time's running out on that front. But yeah, that is pretty much it from me today on the Daily Newcastle podcast. This has been the reviews. If you like them on a Sunday instead of a Monday, let us know. I might even split it in two because it's 35 minutes. Put 17, the first part out on Sunday, second part out on Monday. But we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's all from me today. We'll see you on Tuesday, definitely, as Nicola, myself, and Ian will dissect the positive and the negatives from this game and lead up to our match versus the K-League 11. Let's go.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.